Welcome to another episode of Darkways. Today, we dive into the twisted and nightmarish story of a man whose name is synonymous with fear, and whose crimes are carved into the very fabric of our darkest dreams. Freddy Krueger. Our story begins in the quiet town of Springwood, Ohio. An average sleepy suburb on the surface. But beneath this facade, a far darker tale was being written in blood. Frederick Charles Krueger, the bastard son of 100 maniacs. Born into Hathaway House at the Springwood Asylum, Freddy's start in life was a nightmare. Abused, tormented, and ultimately abandoned, the seeds of his malevolent spirit were sown early. But Freddy's cruel childhood was just the prelude to a symphony of terror. As Freddy grew older, his taste for suffering only deepened. He became the Springwood Slasher, a serial killer who preyed on the children of Elm Street. His reign of terror was brutal, and he was methodical. Over time, the townsfolk began to suspect who was behind the disappearances. And, in a rare twist of fate in the world of horror, justice caught up with him. But not all justice is served by the law. A legal loophole set Krueger free, and that was the final straw for the enraged parents of Springwood. One cold night, they tracked Freddy down to his filthy boiler room hideout, and they took the law into their own hands. They burned Freddy alive, hoping to put an end to his evil once and for all. But some evils don't die so easily. Death was only the beginning for Freddy Krueger. In his final moments, he struck a bargain with dark entities. Entities that granted him powers far beyond the mortal coil. Freddy returned from death, not in flesh, but in the realm of nightmares. He became the Dream Demon, a sadistic force that stalks his prey while they sleep. In dreams, Freddy was omnipotent. He thrived on fear, using his clawed glove to carve his way through the subconscious of his victims, one bloody nightmare at a time. No one was safe. His reach was endless, his malice infinite. With each soul he claimed, Freddy grew stronger, feeding on their terror, living off their despair. And yet, he remained trapped in the dream world.
This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV. Welcome to prime time.
Criminal psychologist and author of the New York Times best-selling book, Monsters Among Us, Dr. Heather Moore.
Freddy Krueger represents a perfect storm of psychological trauma, sadism, and pure malice. Born into violence and shaped by abuse, he became what many in my field would call a revenge killer. But Freddy didn't just kill for revenge. He killed for pleasure. And that is what sets him apart from your average serial killer. When we look at Freddy's profile, we see a man who was failed by the system, but also a man who chose to embrace the darkness within himself. He didn't just want to kill. He wanted to terrify. The glove, the choice of young victims, it was all about asserting control. The ultimate power trip.
According to Dr. Moore, Freddy's desire to dominate didn't end with his mortal life. His pact with the dark entities to become the Dream Demon suggests he craved something more, something beyond the tangible world. Dr. Marcus Green, sleep disorder specialist and nightmare researcher.
Nightmares have long been a subject of both fear and fascination. For someone like Freddy Krueger to exist in the dream world as a demonic entity preying on the subconscious, it's a horrifying concept. Dreams are where we are most vulnerable. They're unfiltered, raw, and intimate. If someone or something could manipulate that state, well, it would be the ultimate invasion. Freddy's ability to turn our safe spaces into a landscape of horror, it's genius in a macabre sort of way. The idea that you could be hunted while asleep, that there is no escape, even in your dreams. That taps into some of our deepest, most primal fears.
But even in the realm of nightmares, Freddy's power was not absolute. Another entity, far older and far more malevolent, took notice of him. The entity, from the universe of Dead by Daylight. The entity, a malevolent force that feeds on hope, saw in Freddy a kindred spirit, a hunter of the helpless. It plucked him from the dream world and cast him into its own twisted domain, the fog. Here, Freddy found himself in a new kind of hunting ground, a realm where killers are pitted against survivors in a never-ending cycle of terror. But in this domain, Freddy is just one of many, a pawn in the entity's cruel game. But what does it mean for a killer like Freddy to be placed in the entity's world? Is he truly in control, or is he merely another tool for a force beyond comprehension? Folklorist and paranormal researcher, Dr. James Vergara.
The entity from Dead by Daylight is a force that has been referenced in various myths and legends across cultures, a creature that feeds on suffering, a spirit that dwells in the shadows of our most primal fears. By pulling Freddy into its world, it sees a like-minded being, a fellow predator. The entity's realm is a patchwork of different fears and traumas, a reflection of its victims' deepest terrors. Freddy, with his ability to manipulate nightmares, is a perfect tool in its arsenal. But make no mistake, Freddy is still a pawn in a much larger game. The entity uses him, just as it uses all the killers. Freddy may think he's in control, but in the entity's world, control is an illusion.
So, is Freddy truly free in this new realm? Or has he simply traded one hell for another? Once again, criminal psychologist, Dr. Heather Moore.
It's a symbiotic relationship, really. Freddy thrives on fear, and the entity provides an endless supply of terrified victims. But in this world, Freddy must abide by rules he didn't create. He's not the omnipotent force he once was. And that makes him dangerous, but also vulnerable.
Freddy Krueger's journey from a child-killing psychopath to a dream demon and now a tool of the entity is a tale of evolution and adaptation. In the fog, he's found new purpose, new prey, and new challenges. But how long can a monster like Freddy remain content playing by someone else's rules? And what will happen when he decides to break free again? The nightmare never truly ends. Not for Freddy. Not for his victims. And, maybe, not for us. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the dark mind of Freddy Krueger. Remember, if you're enjoying these tales from the dark side, please like, share, and subscribe to Darkways, and always, sleep with one eye open.